that for you at 11:30 today. Make sure you're sticking around for some great Titans coverage. We got a lot to get into with training camp. We are going to discuss what the hell is happening in the NFL with Aaron Rodgers, because I am blown away about the situation taking place in Green Bay. But we got to start with the SEC. The SEC is officially, or has officially been petitioned by Texas and Oklahoma to join the Conference of Champions. By the way, if you want to get involved, 615-737-1045. You can do that on the phone line, 615-737-1045. Your participation is always welcome, as well as on Zone TV, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook Live, Twitter. Hang out with us in studio from 10 to 1 each day. So Heather Dinich reported this morning of ESPN, Oklahoma and Texas have officially notified the SEC that they are, quote, seeking invitation for membership. This would begin on July 1st, 2025. Apparently, they put together a joint statement and sent it to the league, the new league that they're trying to join. Now, Greg Sankey apparently has also responded, of course, the commissioner of the SEC, to this release that was put out. And they are saying, the two universities, Texas and Oklahoma, look forward to the prospect of discussion regarding the matter, according to the statement. Now, what Greg Sankey said in his statement is that the SEC presidents and chancellors would consider the requests and let Texas and Oklahoma know, which they knew going into this thing, that they would need at least 3/4 of the 14 member schools to be able to get the invite. Quote, this is from Greg Sankey. While the SEC has not proactively sought new members, we will pursue significant change when there is a clear consensus among our members that such actions will further enrich the experiences of our student athletes and lead to greater academic and athletic achievement across our campuses, blah, 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 blah. Don't care. Give me the meat, Greg. Tell me what's really going on. And he does it in the first line of this statement. The SEC, while the SEC has not proactively sought new members, they will pursue significant change when there is a clear consensus among their membership. So, now what we're looking at is a Texas and Oklahoma thirst trap. That's exactly what this is. Now, it does not mean that the SEC isn't, at least the powers that be within the SEC. There will obviously be some objections from some parties, particularly within the state of Texas. Texas A&M's only claim to fame at this point is they're the only school in the state of Texas that can claim the SEC, which, by the way, whether you want to make fun of it just means more as the slug line for the conference, to recruits it sure as hell does. Recruits are under the impression that they have the fast track to the NFL. Even though so few of them end up going pro, if they can get into the best conference with the best coaches, the best competition, where you're playing against some savages week in and week out, that means more in the recruiting process, especially when you consider Texas. Texas hasn't won the Big 12 in like 13 years. It's not like the competition gets better in the SEC because you add down the corpse of the Texas Longhorns. Now, it does help your branding. It helps your television deals. Of course it does. We've talked about this at length. This is all about super conferences. You remember how pissed off Lucas was when this almost happened in European soccer? When the American ownership and the EPL just made a grab for the money? This is the exact same thing, except in college football, it's going to work.
I probably made this analogy during that whole fiasco. This would be like if Texas and Oklahoma just joined the SEC.
I think you're giving yourself too much credit, but that's okay.
No, I think those are the words I said.
Well, lucky for us, everything we say is documented, buddy, so we can find the tapes on that. But this is a Texas and Oklahoma thirst trap at its core. Now, again, does the SEC benefit by adding, what is the marquee team? What is the national powerhouse, even in name and brand only, in the Big 12 now? Baylor? Only because they've been embroiled in scandal for the past decade, it feels like. There is no reason for anybody to watch the Big 12 anymore without Texas and Oklahoma.
I mean, Iowa State is the best program remaining.
Right. And how big a draw is Iowa State on a night in and night out basis? They are a good team because what's the name of the coach? He was getting
Matt Campbell, yeah.
Matt Campbell. He was getting pro consideration.
Oh yeah, he's consistently one of the top names on the coaching carousel in college football.
Who
every
tried
single
to
year.
scoop him this offseason? Didn't somebody try to hire Matt Campbell away from Iowa State?
I think a lot of people did. I mean, I think Tennessee gave him a call. I mean, he and Luke Fickell were kind of A and B when it came to those first two names that got calls across the board on the coaching carousel. He's done a phenomenal job with that program.
So okay, Matt Campbell and Iowa State, but for how much longer, and how much longer is Matt Campbell going to be at Iowa State? I'm sure he signed a contract extension because he has all the leverage in the world, and that's the best thing to happen to Iowa State in God knows how long. But again, I ask you, why am I watching the Big 12 if not for Texas and Oklahoma? Oklahoma is legitimately going to raise the stakes. Texas really brings nothing but just gobs and gobs of money, which is what this is about. Now, I think that the more this story advances, the more that we are going to look at a situation where there's another shoe yet to drop, right? Because this hit us all over the head as if it just dropped from the sky, when in reality there has been so much planning up until this point for essentially, in the words of the great Mike Leach, Texas and Oklahoma to pull a coup d'etat and get the hell out of the conference that they founded. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. Christian Antonio on Twitch writes in, translating Greg Sankey's statement. He says, quote, we didn't ask for them, but yeah, sure. We'll give it a sniff. We'll see if we got some room. Why not? But the question then becomes, who stands to foil these best laid plans? Because as it was pointed out in the statement by Greg Sankey to Texas and Oklahoma that ESPN has been able to dig up, apparently, a 3/4 majority of the 14-member schools is required. Now, Lucas, at the risk of doing math on air, 615-737-1045, I think that they would need at least 4 teams to vote against this to foil it. Now, oh, did I get the math right? That was good. You were quick on the draw with that. Look at you. So you would need 4 teams to get together and put the kibosh on Texas and Oklahoma. Who stands to gain by not having Texas and Oklahoma in the SEC? We've already talked about Texas A&M. I mean, you heard their athletic director, Ross Bjork, at SEC Media Days, who was just down there, to walk amongst the people, to meet and greet the media, to get a little extra shine on Texas A&M if he could. And he is sitting up there on the dais with Paul Feinbaum and Ryan McGee, or I can't remember exactly who was interviewing him at the time, but you know what I'm talking about, on the SEC Network. And he's saying, yeah, our position is that we very much value, I'm paraphrasing, but our position is that we very much value the idea that we're the only school in the state that's in the SEC. That's a big selling point. Of course A&M isn't going to want anything to do with this. Now, for recruiting purposes, I think there are a couple other teams that you could look at, a couple other SEC members that would look at this and say, what the hell do we want Texas and Oklahoma in here? Again, it's not going to improve the level of competition. It's not like these two are going to come in and knock off Alabama. They're nowhere close. Oklahoma is certainly closer. Oklahoma is to be legitimately feared, but not by Alabama. And that's what matters at the end of the day. 615-737-1045. Let's start with Scott in Bethpage, who wants to weigh in on this topic. What's up, Scott?
Hey, good morning, Buck. Hey, real quick on this, I just don't see how this wouldn't benefit everybody. I know even though A&M says they don't want it, I don't see how it's going to pull recruits from them. It's going to create some really good, fresh rivalries. With Alabama and Oklahoma, I can see that being a beautiful rivalry. Texas, LSU, Texas, Tennessee, that type of stuff. I see some really, really, really nice games coming out of that. And hopefully one day the playing field will level out with Bama at some point or get a little closer. But also, I want to touch on something else real quick. somebody about a week or two ago made a mention of Nick Saban being the GOAT.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not disputing. He's the best thing. He's the best thing out there right now. I mean, there's no doubt what he's accomplished over his career from start to finish is dynamic. But I think it's a little premature to call him the GOAT until he retires. And I want to fight that because there's another guy that's beat him twice in a national championship. And I'm not saying that Dabo's the GOAT, but I am saying that Saban, he may be the greatest of all time once he retires, and I think that would be fitting. But when you've got a coach in major college football that has beat you twice in the national championship, and the last time he handled them, I just don't think it's appropriate to really say who the GOAT is right now unless you're talking about someone who's retired. That's my thoughts. And I hear a lot of people say he's the GOAT, but he's not the GOAT till he's done, in my opinion. Thanks, guys.
Hey, thanks for the call, Scott. 615-737-1045. So we just turned into the Paul Feinbaum show for a second. That was not the direction I thought this was going to go today.
Saban's not the GOAT, Paul.
No, but don't make fun of Scott.
No. Love Scott.
Hey,
Love Scott.
back off.
Love
You leave Scott and Beth Page alone because honestly, if you're going to make the argument against it, and few people would, that's as good an argument as I would be willing to hear. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean I agree with it because Scott. Well, here's what I'll say, Scott. We can't wait for anybody to retire. This is not the age of sports that we live in. I need instant gratification.
Plus, he's never going to retire. Like when he's coaching at 150 years old and winning national championships, we can call him the GOAT then, right? Even though he's not retired.
He's just gonna turn into a vampire like Rick Pitino and just haunt the sidelines of SEC football games for the rest of time.
I mean, can we call Tom Brady the GOAT?
Yes.
He's not retired.
No.
He's never going to retire.
No. So, what Scott is saying is if you have a legitimate foil and they don't play often enough for it to be the true kind of rivalry. Now, let me take this in parts because I want to take Kendall in the Burrow coming up next. He'll lead us off. Adam Sparks of USA Today, who is the new University of Tennessee beat writer. What an upset. We're very happy for our buddy Adam Sparks, formerly the Vandy beat writer for the Tennessee, and he is going to absolutely crush. And we're going to get into some Vols talk later in this hour before we turn it over to Titans training camp for the rest of the day. But I want to get to, Scott made some really good points there. I want to take Kendall, then we'll get to Adam Sparks and talk about these Vols and continue the conversation about the SEC. If you want in on the action, you can do that. 615-737-1045. I'm Buck Reising. This is 1045 The Zone.
Jay Martin Ramon. Just say it how you wanna.
Talk about a lot of things that are happening down on Rocky Top. Yeah, I said down. I know it's over on Rocky Top.
Screw it. Say it how you want to.
I don't care.
We do not care.
Jay Martin Ramon. Jason Martin and Ramon Foster. Tomorrow morning starting at 6 on 1045 The Zone.
in the Southeastern Conference lately? Well, not quite yet. First, there has to be a vote. 11 of the 14 SEC institutions need to approve Texas and Oklahoma joining the Conference of Champions, which is not the Pac-12. In fact, Bill Walton, it is the SEC. I love Bill Walton. He's probably my favorite college basketball commentator. But in that regard, he is incorrect. He is mistaken. The Pac-12 can get the hell out of here. And soon it will. We'll see. I'm curious to know who joins other conferences after Texas and Oklahoma end up leaving the Big 12 and the Big 12 completely disbands, which is inevitable at this point, right?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the Wild West feel of just open season on the remaining 8 Big 12 teams.
Everybody run for the money. Once NIL got passed and the kids were able to get paid, all the colleges looked around and said, what's stopping us? We could do this too. 615-737-1045. Remember, new Knoxville News Sentinel Tennessee beat writer Adam Sparks, formerly the best in the business on the Vanderbilt beat. He will join us coming up next to talk about this at greater length. But I wanted to talk quickly about what Scott and Beth Page called in and then take Kendall in the borough who's been waiting patiently. What Scott and Beth Page had to say, if you weren't listening in the last segment, basically, he thinks that this means nothing but good things for the SEC. And what I would say to you is you are correct, Scott. My contention is that the recruiting effect is such on A&M that this is what was Texas A&M before they were an SEC school? Nothing.
Little brother.
What was Texas A&M before they dumped all of the SEC money into their facilities and into their budget to go hire a championship-winning coach in Jimbo Fisher, who has made a massive difference, by the way? What was Texas A&M before the SEC? Missouri. Hell out of here. These two institutions, their profile is exponentially higher because of the conference that they play in. Now, what I will say to you is it benefits everybody else other than, a handful of institutions who are going to be salty about this. It benefits the fans because I think more of us want more meaningful games. The matchups are going to be great. Texas LSU, Texas A&M, we finally get that game back. There's a lot to benefit by the conference, by the two institutions who want to join, and for the fans who care about more meaningful college football. I don't need to see any more sacrificial lamb games when Western Kentucky goes into Death Valley. Give me the biggest and the best and the brightest all of the time. Shoot it straight into my veins. 615-737-1045. Kendall is in the borough. He wants to talk about SEC expansion. What's up, Kendall?
Hey, guys, thanks for the call. My question is, how many schools are too much in a conference? And the other question I have, and I'll hang up and listen off air, what's going to be the realignment with this? We're just going to keep stuffing a school out in the Midwest and the East of the SEC, or what long-term effects do you see of this as far as the geographical alignment? And I'll listen off air.
Hey, thanks for the call, Kendall. I mean, this is what we were just talking about, right? Who joins the Pac-12? What happens in the Big Ten? Does say, just hypothetically, there's been no reporting on this, but my larger point about this is, where will these, once Texas and Oklahoma hit the nuclear option yesterday, that gives the rest of these Big 12 institutions the opportunity, because there's no stopping this at this point unless they somehow do not get a 3/4 majority among these SEC members who need to vote on this particular subject.
Now, Kendall's point is about realignment within the SEC divisions, pods that have been brought up over the course of the last 7 days or so.
So I misunderstood. I thought he was talking about like conferences as a whole.
He's talking about like putting Missouri in the SEC East, or the prospect of just throwing Texas in the West and Oklahoma in the East, or if they're just going to totally start from scratch and rebuild the way the SEC is aligned. I think that turns into the number one question in the context of the SEC as far as where those teams will play. We've been talking about crossover opponents. Dan Mullen has pushed back against it. What does that look like with Texas and Oklahoma in the picture? I mean, obviously, you would think they're able to preserve the Red River rivalry with a crossover game if they're in opposite divisions. There's a lot to suss through when it comes to how they fit into the conference when you actually start playing games.
So let me address it this way, Kendall, because the best answer that we can give you at this point is we don't know. But here's why when Chris Childers came on this radio show, Lucas, you missed him. He was great on Thursday. He was exceptional. because he came on and told us all what we needed to hear, that everything that you know about college football is dead or dying soon, that we are mere moments away from pay for play now that NIL and conference realignment has already begun. Everything that we know about college football is about to shift. So basically what I'm telling you is I don't know exactly how, in what specific ways this is going to affect the landscape. But to your point about how many teams is too many teams in a conference, well, I guess my question to you would be, how does it affect the price tag on the television deal when they renegotiate it? Because that's all that matters. Can they benefit financially more? Can the conferences benefit financially more by stacking the deck with super conferences? Because then the answer would make it, as long as they are still high-profile institutions like the Texas Longhorns, like the Oklahoma Sooners, why would they not continue to add these powerful brands and scatter everybody else to the wind? They don't care about the rest of FBS college football. They're just trying to do what benefits them the most. Now, this is going to destroy a lot of traditions, but what I would say to you is I don't necessarily get attached to college football traditions anymore, because Red River rivalry is a great staple among college football games. But stuff like this is probably going to change with the way that they keep shifting the balance of power in the sport. So with that, we welcome in our buddy Adam Sparks, who is the new Vols beat writer for the Knoxville News-Sentinel. My brother, what is going on? Congratulations.
Thanks. That still sounds a little weird, even when other people say it.
No, that's super foreign to me. I'm surprised I got it out of my mouth correctly.
Yeah, I've found I speak slower these days because I'm afraid. I'm already living in Knoxville. I'm afraid of sort of tripping over my words and saying Vanderbilt beat reporter with the Tennessean, as I've said for 7 years.
Sure.
But I'm adjusting to it. You change your email sig, you change your Twitter profile, you change. Last night I was warned by somebody that, hey, I just left you a voicemail, and it still says you're the Vandy beat writer. So I'm finding a new thing
Have a mob on your
to fix
doorstep
every day.
This is like an identity crisis a little bit, right?
It is a little bit, and it's a weird turn for me because I have so much respect and I have a whole lot of relationships with people around Vandy, not just at the school, but the fan base. And so I kind of want to be respectful to them, but then also, there's a new readership, a new audience that I have to go to. And one thing, especially when it comes to rivals, one thing that fans don't want to hear about is how you covered their rival school. And even though it's not a rival, just a school they don't want to hear about. But good thing is I have experience in that because I covered MTSU for 10 years. And when I made the move to the Vanderbilt beat, I knew not to be spending all my time talking about MTSU when I was covering Vandy. So doing that now, covering the Vols.
At Adam Sparks is where you can follow him. He's going to provide exceptional Vols coverage, just as he did with Vanderbilt and MTSU before that. One of the best in the business now in Knoxville on the beat. So I guess before we dig in on the Vol stuff, because there is some interesting news going on with the nation's top defensive lineman moving to Knoxville, and I know it's got Vols fans all in a tizzy. But before we do that, Adam, what do you make of the news of Texas and Oklahoma submitting their formal request, according to the reports, to join the SEC today?
Well, I mean, anything that Greg Sankey is putting his name on publicly, that means he's already turned the wheels quite a bit privately. I heard before I came on air about sort of the votes. I'd be shocked if they didn't have the votes. It's sort of like a political thing, right? You don't put something on the House floor unless you think you've got the votes.
Right.
So you get the votes long before it ever comes up for a vote. And so you've got to have 4 to kill this. 4-member schools. If you polled them privately, only thinking of themselves, well, Texas A&M would vote against it. Missouri would vote against it. There's nothing for them to gain, really. They want to be separate from those in the Big 12. They think they've sort of moved up in the SEC, and they certainly have. Arkansas would vote against it. And so you've got 3 right there. Well, who else would vote against it if you just did that in a vacuum? Well, think about schools like Auburn and like Tennessee, schools that can win a national championship because they have before, but they're now sort of in the middle of the pack of the SEC. and they're taken down 2 notches by Texas and Oklahoma joining. Alabama and LSU and Georgia, those schools can still win a national title with Oklahoma and Texas in the league. It just becomes more far-fetched for teams in the middle, like a Tennessee and Auburn. Any schools like South Carolina or Kentucky. Anybody Ole Miss ever hoping to have that one big year where they can make a run? That's probably out of the cards with those 2 schools coming in. So they would vote against it, but they're not going to, because I think Greg Sankey has already solidified support privately, and it's just that paycheck and it's stability. The way this is going, you're going to have a number of schools on the outside looking in the next few years in college football, and you don't want to be one of those schools on the outside. And so this is sort of solidifying power in the SEC, and you want to do whatever the conference wants to do, and the conference wants to expand. And this was somewhat inevitable. I think this is probably going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. It's sped up, I think, somewhat because of the COVID year, because there was a little bit of a chicken a year ago where the Big Ten said we're going to do this with their scheduling, and the Pac-12 said we're going to do this other thing, and they thought the SEC would go along, and the SEC said we'll do what we want to do. And when they did, and nobody really stopped them, not that they could, I think it told Greg Sankey and the SEC that whatever they wanted to do, they could, and that's what they're doing now.
Adam, considering everything that you just said, especially with the money coming in and the stance Greg Sankey will be taking on this, and you're right, like schools like Tennessee suffer a competitive setback as far as winning the SEC when 2 powerhouse programs step into it, but they're probably going to vote yes. Do you think across the board in some ways there could be kind of a sense of disgruntlement for a lot of the schools that are voting yes in this process?
You're talking about coaches. I don't think coaches want this. This is more losses on their resume. It's just going to be more difficult, and it was already hard enough to win in the SEC. Go up a notch to ADs. They're probably a little more on the fence. That there's certainly going to be more money flowing in, but their coaches that they're tied to, it's going to be more difficult for them to win. I think when you go up to presidents and chancellors, they're not really judged by what the record is on the football field. They're judged by how they run the university and how much funds they can bring in. So they're going to lean more toward expanding, because that check gets bigger and bigger. Before the COVID year, it was $45 million was the distribution for each school. Add whatever the Longhorn network is in the markets, Oklahoma, Texas now, that check's going to be even bigger, and it's pretty hard to turn down that kind of money when you're always looking for funding with the universities. But so it depends on the level. Coaches won't like it. ADs will be okay with it. Executives, presidents, chancellors, they'll be perfectly fine with that big check.
Adam Sparks of the Knoxville News Sentinel here with us on 104.5 The Zone, Vols beat writer down there in Knoxville. So as somebody who has covered this sport for, not to age you, but for quite some time at this point, what do you make of the way that the sport and the business is just laying so bare the greed in front of us, Adam? Because I don't know if people get tired of me harping on this, but when we're talking about the changing of traditions or the losing of traditions in college football and the potential for super conferences like this would become, even if in becoming a super conference, they're watering down the product for these teams, as you mentioned, stuck in the middle. What do you make of the way that the sport itself is trending?
Yeah, I mean, the mask is off on a lot of these things. There's no more, wink at a lot of this stuff. NIL is now where athletes are going to be paid, and that's a whole other discussion, what's fair or unfair about that. So money's on the table there with NIL rules. More money's going to be on the table with expansion. More money is going to be on the table in terms of TV rights. I mean, we're quickly going to more where this is not going to be, what channel are you on, but it's more of the streaming wars that we see, with Netflix and Hulu and all those things. The streaming wars will now come into college football more so, especially with ESPN Plus. So this is 100% about money. I think the interesting next chapter is going to be what the Big Ten and ACC do because the SEC was long past this. The SEC had pretty much said, a long time ago, we're in it to win in football and we're in it for the money, and we're not going to make any bones about it. The Big Ten culturally has always kind of held to that. It's about academics. Sure, we're going to try to win in football, but we're a step above that. We're into academics and the culture of places and that sort of thing, and it's only sports. The Big Ten has held on to that a little more. The ACC has too. They're going to have to let that go if they're going to survive or even get close to competing. So I think that's the next chapter in expansion, whether they will try to have this culturally higher status or they'll buy into what the SEC's been doing for a long time and try to just snatch up schools just to win in football.
So with a little bit of a pivot to talk about one of these teams in the middle whose season we are rapidly approaching, your new beat, the new beat that you're on, the Tennessee Vols, what can you tell us about Walter Nolan, the nation's top defensive lineman prospect in the class of 2022, and his move to Knoxville?
Yeah, he's moving to Powell, which is in Knox County. It's actually 4 now because they have 3 wide receivers that are D1 prospects. He'll now be at least the 4th D1 prospect on that roster. UT's recruiting the other wide receivers. Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Michigan, Tennessee. Tennessee was not in his top 8, but with the move to Knoxville, he has put Tennessee in the top 5. That may be sort of a charity thing, but I do think at least opens the door a little bit for UT to go after him. Obviously he's 15 minutes from campus, so the unofficial visits is where UT is going to have to do its work. And so some of that I don't know what Walter Nolan looks for, what he's looking for. I mean, if he's looking for NIL money, Alabama is gonna have the edge with almost anybody.
Sure.
But if UT can win and show a good culture and these unofficial visits, he develops relationships, not with the staff, but I would say even more so with the younger players on that team. I think this will seem a little bit more like a community to him, and you could maybe land a commitment there. But I mean, it's definitely catch up. Just because he's moving to Knoxville doesn't mean that UT, bumps up to 3rd or 2nd or 1st on his list. I think they're still probably 4th or 5th of his 5. And, Josh Heupel's going to have to win, I think, to convince a guy like that to come to UT, but he's going to have to do that with everybody, and that's going to be difficult this year because this is not a roster built for winning. This is a roster built for rebuilding. The only thing you could hope for, I think, with Heupel is that he figures out a quarterback and that he has an exciting offense. The best case scenario is Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss last year.
Right.
Where you find a quarterback, you have an offense, and it's fun to watch. And you say, once we get the defense good, this could be a competitive team. But unlike Ole Miss and Kiffin, Heupel does not have the skill guys or necessarily the quarterback that Kiffin did. So he's going to have to find those pretty quickly.
Well, there's no question that Walter Nolan would have ample opportunity to be able to contribute to a defense that we, I think most, if you're a Vols fan, you fear watching once Saturdays get around. It's gonna be reminiscent of the Titans on 3rd down last year in 2020, I imagine. Adam Sparks of the Knoxville News-Sentinel, which I have gotten out successfully 3 times and not tripped over myself because he's no longer at the Tennessean. Covering the Tennessee Vols, at Adam Sparks is where you find him on Twitter. He is going to be producing great journalism, and the Knoxville News-Sentinel, well worth your subscription for Adam and all of our friends who work down there. Buddy, congratulations again. We're looking forward to following along, and I'm sure we'll bother you again at some point.
All right, good to be on. We'll see y'all.
Okay, let's come back and talk about the SEC. What Adam Sparks had to say about the teams affected in the middle and how the addition of Texas and Oklahoma is inherently going to water that competition down. That's coming up next. I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Witness the passion that unites us all.
Touchdown, Tennessee! Wow!
The Vols play here.
104.5 The Zone.
Fans, I'm here to talk about
during the commercial break that Adam Sparks is going to make me sign up for the Knoxville News Sentinel, which is an inherent slap into the face to our good buddy Mike Wilson, who we have on all the
Love
time.
you, Mike.
He's one of our favorites. But, you know, Mike comes on the radio show often enough, I feel like I don't have to. But that's not true. I use my free article allotment. I'm starting to get to the point in my life, though, where like I'm comfortable paying for subscription sites in a way that I did not think I was going to be one of those people. Because now I've got The Athletic. Well, I heard J Mart talking this morning about the article on Aaron Rodgers, where a part of the deal to get him back in the building was to, you know, basically have the Packers make a public apology. And I went and sought out the article, and it was behind a paywall. And then I had to say, well, no, I'm already paying for HBO and Netflix and Disney Plus and Hulu and God knows it, Peacock, just to watch the damn Olympics because I can't find it on 6 different NBC channels. But I'm at the point in my life
right now.
Are you watching water polo?
Yeah, it's 17-2, U.S.
I'm
watching South Africa.
I'm watching Mac Jones in a number 50 Mike Vrabel jersey throw footballs at Pat's practice. 615-737-1045. But well worth your subscription, for real, at the Knoxville News Sentinel. Adam Sparks is going to crush that beat. But what he brought up was an interesting point about, you know, who would be, in theory, to shoot this thing down, to kill it in its crib, Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC, who would be the 4th team to do this? Because it would take 4 to basically nuke the SEC's potential addition of Texas and Oklahoma, the way that they have formally requested today. Now, what he brought up was teams like Ole Miss and Tennessee, middling teams, who are currently trying to find a way to, you know, either make a run or build upon success or just wait for Nick Saban to get the hell out of the conference finally so somebody else can have a piece. But now what's happening, in theory, is, I mean, I would argue the most promising young and talented coach in the sport at Oklahoma. Lincoln Riley is coming to the SEC. So if you somehow lose Nick Saban, if somehow by the grace of the football gods, Nick Saban finds himself deciding that he wants to spend more time not showering in showers, but instead showering off the dock at his lake because he's got, what did he say? He's got too much hillbilly in him. That's the West Virginia in him. If such time as Nick Saban and Miss Terry finally want to spend their retirement together, who is going to take over the SEC? Well, in theory, had Oklahoma and Texas not joined the fray, you could see somebody like Lane Kiffin or Josh Heupel, which remains to be seen, his competency level at Tennessee. But teams like that, Arkansas, Tennessee, Ole Miss, who are trying to get back up on their feet in a conference that it is terribly difficult to do so, does this kill that potential? Does it kill the future opportunities for these teams to do that? Because Lincoln Riley is going to come into the SEC and just run the show after Nick Saban retires. Doesn't that potential exist, I feel? 615-737-1045. Let's go to Brady in Crossville who wants to talk about this subject. What's up, Brady?
Hi.
Hello, Brady.
Hi.
How are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
We're doing great. What would you like to talk about?
I'm talking about the Vols.
Okay.
And funny story, actually. When I was younger, I thought that the NFL and college was switched. So the Titans played for college, and the Vols played for NFL.
Oh, really? Did you? Now,
yes.
Now, when you're talking about how much younger were you, Brady? Like how many years ago was this?
Well, I'm 11 right now, and this was when I was about 6 years old.
Okay, so you have grown, you've matured, you've learned more about the world of football.
Yep.
We love to see it. Well, are you a Vols fan?
Oh yeah, big time. My family actually loves the Vols. We love the Titans. We love all of these Tennessee teams.
Well, that's awesome, Brady. Thank you so much for the call. We call back anytime, okay, buddy?
All right.
615-737-1045 is the number. Does it terrify you that there's an 11-year-old listening to our show right now? Because that just hit me in the face in a way that I was not prepared for.
I think we're popular in that demographic.
Yeah, why? I mean, listen, that makes me happy because you win with young people. And we ourselves are supposed to be young people. Even
the new
though
age.
I'm the oldest 28-year-old you'll ever meet. But I love that. That makes me very happy.
I guess college is a lot more like the NFL than it was, or it's quickly becoming that.
Sure is now.
So maybe he's not totally off.
No, I think the best analysis that we've got all day is from Brady. 615-737-1045 is the number. So would Tennessee? So Greg Sankey has clearly been whipping the votes, right? Sparks made the great comparison of being on the House or the Senate floor, and you're not going to bring something to the floor without having the necessary votes to make sure that your motion or your bill gets passed, right? This is something that Greg Sankey has been doing behind the scenes for quite some time, though his statement says, while we're currently not considering the addition of any new member institutions, we will consider what is best for us.
Not proactively searching for new members.
Correct. But if we can proactively benefit our bank account, then why, yes, we will put this to a vote.
We can proactively accept your request, but we are not proactively looking for your request.
Yeah, I love that. Buckethead just tweeted us, Brady is what I used to do to George Plaster.
That's good.
That's awesome. Can you imagine?
That's an OG Nashville Sports Radio comment. That's
good.
My
goodness. That makes my heart happy. 615-737-1045. That also scares me about what my future is. Regardless, when we come back, we trusted you guys in a way that we shouldn't trust you guys because we put it on Twitter at Buck Reising where you can vote on the polls. What one question would you ask Mike Vrabel today? Because Titans training camp, the first in-person press conference. I'm a little emotional about this, to be honest with you. I've got FOMO today because this is the first Mike Vrabel press conference I've missed in 3 years, heading into year 4 of his tenure. Not that Mike misses me or I miss Mike, but I don't know. This feels weird. I don't know what to make of it. Anyway, we trusted you guys on Twitter. We should not have. We asked you the one question that you would ask Mike Vrabel. We will tell you what the majority of those responses yielded, and we will pose our own questions coming up next. And then at 11:30, Mike Vrabel at the podium, live to begin the 2021 season. Training camp, baby. This show is broadcasting live out at training camp for the rest of the week. And by the way, Titans general manager John Robinson will be our first guest live from training camp on Wednesday. Very exciting stuff. The best in the business when it comes to Titans coverage right here, 104.5 The Zone.
The 3HL, by any means necessary.
By any means necessary. Defense, scoring, taking people out, whatever it is, it's on. You got to win, and it's going down.
The 3HL with Brent Doherty, Don Davenport, and Ron Slay. This afternoon starting at 3, 104.5 The Zone.
hour. Harry Douglas, by the way, former Titans wide receiver and former Falcons teammate of Julio Jones, will join us in the noon hour. We'll get into the wide receivers at greater length with Harry. But in the meantime, we put out a question because I'm not going to be able to go to the press conference today. Obviously, I'm doing a radio show at 11:30, but we will carry the press conference live for you. I have texted my questions to various Titans media members so that I get my questions answered or at least asked. We'll see if Mike is we'll see. I bet he's going to be doing a bit of a stand-up routine. It's been 18 months since he's seen any of us idiots. So it's probably going to be a dynamic that I'm honestly upset about. 4 years. I've been to every Mike Vrabel press conference in 4 years. This is the first one I'm missing.
I want someone to tell Vrabel beforehand that Buck's not going to be there, but he has scattered questions throughout multiple reporters. Can you find the Easter eggs of Buck Reising's question?
Head on a swivel, Chief. 615-737-1045 is the number. But what one question would you want to ask Mike Vrabel? We put it to a poll on Twitter. None of you can be trusted. Clearly.
No, some can.
Okay, but the vast minority can be trusted with asking actual questions. Lucas, how many responses did we get saying, hey, Mike, would you still cut off your penis to win the Super Bowl?
I counted 4, but there were like 60 replies, so I might have missed a couple. Several about Will Compton. There were more about Will Compton. Are you going to bring back Will Compton? When are you going to sign Will Compton? There might have been 8 of those across the replies, but there were some good ones, like Puka. We can always trust Puka.
Always. She's a better producer than you are, by the way. She sends me so much more content than you.
There are no disagreements there. She said, kicking. Didn't you learn from last season? Puka's fed up.
So that's my one question, to be honest with you. My one question is, Mike, why didn't you bring Stephen Gostkowski back? And it could be, here's what I'll say. There could be completely valid reasons. We just haven't asked him the question. I think up front, we've asked him about the kicking competition, and he gives us an answer about, Blake Haubeil, who's the undrafted rookie free agent this year out of Ohio State, who was not out there for the majority of mandatory minicamp, if memory serves, and Tucker McCann, who spent almost all of last year on the practice squad injured reserve list. So he was not available, and we have seen precious little of them. All they can do is watch the kickers that they have at training camp or through these practices, through the offseason. And if the kickers make the kicks, then that's the kicker you go with, right? It shouldn't, it is more complex than that. But sometimes it's not. But my deepest concern, and I wrote about this at A2ZSportsNashville.com, I did my Titans training camp preview, the 3 storylines that you absolutely have to be following heading into camp. And probably the most undecided is kicker. Sam Sloman, who made the game-winning kick against the Houston Texans on the road for the Titans to win the division. Sam Sloman is not with the team. Lucas, can you guess, and I have the answer because I wrote it in my training camp preview yesterday. Can you guess for me what the Titans' field goal percentage was in 2019? The year that they went to the AFC Championship game.
The Greg Joseph, Cody Parkey, Ryan Suckup revolving door year.
Correct.
Field goal percentage.
Field goal percentage. This is not good, right?
58.
High. 44.4%.
Wow.
They made the AFC title game making 44.4% of their field goals. What do you think their percentage was last year? Because it was substantially improved. What do you think it was last year?
I'd say 74.
71.4% in 2020. How many kickers do you think accounted for those 2 ghastly percentages?
How many total kickers?
How many total kickers?
Oh, man. Yeah, Suckup, Parkey, Joseph, Gostkowski, Sloman. There's got to be a 6th one in there. I'm going to say 6.
6 total kickers.
Who's the one? Who am I missing?
So let me run through it again. Gostkowski, Sloman, Suckup, Parkey, Greg Joseph.
Yeah.
Who are we missing? Ryan Santoso.
Wow.
Do you remember Ryan Santoso? Now, Ryan Santoso did not attempt a field goal. He was a kickoff specialist when they brought Suckup back too early.
No, Who's the Brazilian kicker that?
Santoso.
That was Santoso? I thought it was a different name.
Yes, Ryan Santoso. 6 kickers across 2 years, 44.4%, 71.4%. Now, to Gostkowski's credit.
Cairo Santos.
Santos. But,
Cairo Santos.
so Cairo Santos did attempt field goals. Santoso, Ryan Santoso was technically 7, but one of them didn't attempt a field goal, so we don't count him into the equation. 7 damn kickers in 2 years. That's outrageous. To no avail. I mean, listen, they won several games because of Gostkowski last year. And they had many opportunities jeopardized because of Stephen Gostkowski last year. He was so much markedly better down the stretch than he was at the start of the season, right? The Denver game is just to relive that. I watched that game over several times. It was god-awful to relive those missed field goals over and over and over again. Like it was soul-crushing. And then ESPN, the broadcast, flashing over to Gostkowski, who just that week joined the team, sitting by himself, and everybody just kind of looking at him side-eye, like, what the hell, man? You kidding? And then he ended up being a plus for them, but it took some time. He has not gone anywhere. The whole reason that they signed him is, I mean, not the whole reason, but they signed him last year because he was just down the road in Franklin. He bought a house. That's my biggest question. Is it solely because of the money that you did not bring back Stephen Gostkowski this year? Because there's no question that he would not be a better option, a more reliable option than 2 guys who've never attempted an NFL field goal. So we'll see which of the media members who I've texted my questions to ask the questions today. Because Mike Vrabel's press conference, live from St. Thomas Sports Park, the opening of the 2021 season, comes your way coming up next. I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
The biggest topics. Will Bowling hosts the Zone Daily Podcast. Delivered every morning at 5 a.m. on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the entire Zone Podcast Network.
Archery is on right now on NBC. I'm trying so hard to care about this, and I just can't get myself to do it, especially with Simone Biles out now. What am I supposed to do with that? USA basketball sucks. They're blowing leads to France. Evan Fournier, apparently the destroyer of worlds in Olympic competition, stinks. Anyway, Mike Vrabel coming up next. His press conference, the opening of training camp and the opening, unofficially, officially, I don't know, of the 2021 season. Regardless, we have put it to a poll. Which question would you most like to ask of Mike Vrabel today? Now, as we mentioned, many of you are immature, and you've sent us questions about would he still cut off his penis to win a Super Bowl. There is that. Thank you for your participation. Apparently, many of you want to bring back Will Compton. Do you think it would be awkward, Lucas, if I brought Will Compton to training camp with me tomorrow?
Yeah, I know, but you should.
Especially since we have John on, like right before Will comes on.
He's like, hey guys, how's it going?
Because I assume John Robinson, who will be on the radio show tomorrow, don't miss it. What did we say? 11:15? 11:15 for the
That's
GM?
right.
Okay, love to see it. So should we just have Will show up a little early and be like, hey John, you want him? You can have him.
That'd be good radio.
Nobody else does right now. Just have him show up to training camp tomorrow. I'm sure he has FOMO today. I need to be nice to him tomorrow. We'll see. 615-737-1045. What one question would you ask of Mike Vrabel today? I told you what mine would be. Why did you guys feel it was in your best interest to not bring Stephen Gostkowski back this year? And the answer, it may be an easy one. It may just simply be financial. He cost just a little under $3 million last year, and that is precious salary cap space that in the year of the Rona, 2021, no NFL team really has the ability to spend on many luxuries. Now, they found a way to get the Julio Jones deal done. They restructured Ryan Tannehill. There are some financial gymnastics that they've had to do and still may have to. 615-737-1045 is the number. But what one question would you ask Mike Vrabel? Oh, I'm getting pictures now on my timeline. Jim Wyatt and Amy Wells, they're out at the podium. I hate this, Lucas. I'm dying to be out there. We're going to be out there doing the show the rest of the week, but I don't know. I miss it. I miss my friends, my Titans media friends. It's been so long since I've seen any of them in person because of all this crap. 615-737-1045. So some of you, you want to ask about the cutting off the man parts for a Super Bowl. Some of you want to ask about bringing back Will Compton. But I have seen some legitimate questions this year, like Matt, Juicebox 678. What are his thoughts on the extra game this season? How does it change load management? Which is a great question for Vrabel, by the way. Mike Vrabel, who takes very specific, and the training staff, and Robinson, they all work in conjunction together. They take very individualized approaches for how to manage each player's body, basically, throughout the course of the season. That's another fascination to me. How much will Julio Jones actually do? Julio Jones, who has famously not practiced really in the last 2 years, he's just found ways to get his body to Sundays. What will he be able to do? What is necessary for him to do now that he's with a new team for the first time in a decade? 615-737-1045. Let's start the bidding with Matthew in Franklin, who has a Titans question before we go out to St. Thomas Sports Park. What's up, Matthew?
More of a generalized question about the kicker. There's arguably not anybody on the field that is responsible solely for scoring points. And it doesn't seem like they've addressed it at all. So, has there been thought put into it, or has it just been focusing on everything else?
No, Matthew, that's a fair question, right? Because I think, when I talk to people about this over at the facility, there is a concern that they just don't take it seriously enough. Now, Lucas, here's my problem, right? I don't know how to advance the analysis that the professional NFL coaches are doing of the kicking situation. Like Craig Aukerman is tasked with special teams, and Vrabel has the call at the end of the day on who is on the active roster and who is not. But, they make the kicks or they don't in camp, and maybe it's different when they close camp or camp practices to the media or during the regular season when we're only out there for like 20 minutes. Maybe it looks different, but I can't imagine it looks much different. I just don't know. I want to think that they can take it more seriously because it has been botched. Maybe there's some unluckiness to it, but 44.4% in 2019. They made the title game. Inexplicably. It may be their greatest achievement.
Well, Greg Joseph kicked one field goal.
And they lost.
In his time with the Titans at the Chiefs game.
They lost.
Their offense was good. They were scoring touchdowns. If the red zone offense wasn't as good as it was, Titans don't get close to the AFC Championship game.
No, thank God that last year you scored 30.7 points per game because God help you if you had to attempt a field goal. And again, Gostkowski leveled out, which is why I want to know why he's not back. 615-737-1045 before we go out to Mike Vrabel's press conference. Jansen is in Gordonsville. He has a question for the Titans head coach today. What's up?
Well, I would ask Mike Vrabel, what does he do on his downtime? Like, does he have a hobby? Does he collect butterflies, put puzzles together? What do you do when you're not coaching or thinking about football all the time?
That's a good question, Jansen. It is one that you can ask and not we can ask because Mike Vrabel would probably swing on us.
I like to think he collects caterpillars and watches them turn into butterflies.
He has a butterfly garden. Mike Vrabel. They resemble mustaches, perhaps. he seems to find that aesthetic pleasing. No, I mean, I think Vrabel golfs. Like, I'm pretty sure that's the hobby. Because he was playing in that tournament at Lake Tahoe, the celebrity tournament at Lake Tahoe a couple of weeks ago with like Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Joe Buck and Tony Romo. Alfonso Ribeiro, somehow Carlton found his way onto the golf course with Mike Vrabel. Anyway, we will hear from the Titans head coach. His season opening press conference at St. Thomas Sports Park, live and in person. We will do that for you coming up next. I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Coming up today on the 3HL.
Alan Bell joins us to talk about sports gambling.
And Jimmy Wyatt in his weekly appearance. He'll be with us as well.
Plus, the Titans got training camp tomorrow.
Let's go.
Football is the sport of king.
Today, starting at 3 p.m. on 104.5 The Zone.
Podium live out there at St. Thomas Sports Park. Titans head coach fielding questions in person for the first time in quite some time. I'm certain that our questions about the kicker are not going to be the only questions asked. They're futile though they may be, we do still need to know, or I assume you guys want to know, because we're asking questions on behalf of you as fans, about the situation with Caleb Farley. NFI, means he could pass a physical at any point and be cleared to practice with the team. But we have had such precious little updates in this regard on the Titans' first-round pick, and it's not the end of the world if he doesn't start out there at training camp. Remember, we talked about this yesterday. It is okay to take, 10 deep breaths or 20 short ones, whatever makes you feel better, and kind of let this situation play out a little longer with Farley. It's not ideal. I understand why you want to see your bright, shiny new toy, but I do think that it's okay to have a little patience about this. What do you got, Lucas?
Adam Bernhardt, are you satisfied with the team's vaccination level and confident it does not put you at a competitive disadvantage?
That's a good point, because you saw the reporting from Tom Pelissero yesterday that 10 NFL clubs had eclipsed the 90% vaccination mark. Now, we will see how much closer that gets throughout the course of training camp, how big a difference that makes. Oh, look at him. He's walking up to the podium now. He doesn't necessarily look happy to see anybody. Ready to get going. Well, Teresa's not there today. She's in Tokyo.
Oh, no.
So I guess it's time to begin with Titans head coach Mike Vrabel live at the podium now.
Okay, first of all, I'm Catholic, so I guess we'll have to all get along somehow. First off, would just like to welcome you guys back. I think it's been obviously 18 months, Robbie mentioned, since we've been here together back here. You guys doing your job in person, doing my job here in person with the players. We do appreciate, how you cover our football team, cover our players, spread the message to our fans. So it's always good to see you guys here, in person. We got to get along because this is that big stretch. We're going every day for a couple weeks. So we're going to have to all play nice and get along and respect each other. And I know we will. I want to thank Miss Amy, and her family for providing us the resources. As you guys can see, we still have some new construction going on, but the coaches' offices and the meeting rooms, the player meeting rooms, the squad room is finished. It's fantastic. It's going to allow us to teach and coach our players. The cafeteria was done a couple years ago. So again, just want to thank her and her family for continuing to provide us the resources for us to do our job. Be here with the players. We had a couple guys, 30 guys in Saturday, and the rest, the 60 we're in today. Ran, ready to move forward to get going tomorrow morning. And I think that there's, we'll get the other guys back tonight. We'll have a big meeting tonight, and we'll be ready to roll. So, with that, I do notice that we're missing Teresa. Not sure where she's at. I did get a memo. She might have been in Tokyo. Hi, Teresa.
We got a question here from her.
Wow. Good morning, Mike and all the Titans media. Saying hi from Tokyo. Wish I could be there for the first in-person availability since the end of the 2020 season. Since I can't, I have a question, Mike. Mike, as this team starts training camp, how is the vaccination status and levels on your team? Are you near the 80%, 85% range? And for the players who aren't vaccinated at this point, what are you doing to help maybe identify them during practice and inside the building? Thank you so much. I'll see you in a couple weeks.
Thank you, Teresa. There with the vaccine. I get that. I recognize that. Hopefully we can get a lot of that covered here today so that moving forward we can talk about football, we can talk about our team, and we can talk about our players. Is that obviously to everybody, it's also very important to everybody in the league. It's important to the fans, the players, the NFL Players Association. It's important for all of us to make sure that we're well aware of what the protocols are for vaccinated and unvaccinated players and that we follow those. that whatever that may be, the mask wearing, we're all wearing the tracing devices, the social distancing, each and every one of us has to this game, to this league, and most importantly to the team. I'm comfortable with where we're at. We continue to add, recently as yesterday, to the vaccination list, and guys are continuing to do research, to educate themselves, to make a personal decision that we've said it was all along, and hopefully one that they can come to that will help them. And percentages, I'm very comfortable with where they are, and I think they've continued to go up, and I would expect them to go up. As far as identifying those players that haven't been vaccinated, that will be done within our building, so that we can continue to remind them of the protocols that they have to do and make sure that they are following those protocols, practice field. So I wouldn't see any reason to try to differentiate those players on the field. It's being done so that inside the building, we can remind those players that aren't of, hey, what you have to do. And so that was the reason for that differentiation.
Do you have a sense that what you went through early last season with the mini breakout, whatever, and all the rescheduling, that was a motivating factor in maybe guys wanting to get vaccinated?
I don't think so. I think that was so far, so long ago. I think that players wanted to continue to, to educate themselves, to feel comfortable with a personal decision. Their own motivating factors were. Us as a staff, we didn't have many choices.
How much easier and effective will it be once you guys reach 85, or if you've already reached 85?
I don't know where everybody's getting that number. There's no difference in, if you're at 85%, the protocol doesn't change. If you're at 50%, you're getting a different memo. There's protocols for players and everybody that's fully vaccinated, and there's protocols for those that aren't vaccinated or that are vaccinated and haven't become fully vaccinated. That's the only thing that we're tracking right now is what those two protocols are.
Have you had any sense from anyone that they may set something though at some point?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where that ever came from, because I don't know what would change, right? If you're not vaccinated, my guess is they're going to ask you to wear a mask in the building through the entire season. I don't think that would change. So we're not focused on what that is. We're just focused on making sure that we continue to educate our players, to let them make the best decision for them and hopefully this football team, and then make sure that if they are, which they will be in one of those two categories, that they're following the protocols, exactly the way that they've been laid out by the Players Association and the NFL.
The new forfeit rules, though, that the league said last week, does that kind of worry you, or maybe change the tone you take with the players on the decisions?
No, I think those are things that we would deal with if it would ever came up, and the expanded practice squad and the roster, and we're just going to try to prepare and educate them, and that's the most important thing that we can do is prepare right now with the guys that we have that are available to us, and then follow the protocols as things come up.
As you move forward to football, I know in the past, good to great
Hopefully
has been a
soon.
message. What particular message are you looking to establish with your guys to start camp?
Well, I think that we always want to raise expectations. We want to try to find a way to make a positive daily impact on this football team. We want to show up with a great attitude. But I think when you look at training camp, from all the training camps that I've been associated with going back to 1993 or even in high school, that you have to build a certain foundation. You have to build a foundation that is going to stand up over time. It's going to stand up over the stress of a football season that's going to happen, whether it's with injury, with loss, with family, with COVID, with positive tests. There's going to be stress, right? There's a lot of stress in what we do, and that foundation begins now, and it gets built now with the foundation of effort and finish, technique, fundamentals, accountability, building trust. Those are all things that we believe in.
Approach
camp any differently with just 3 preseason games and a 17-game regular season?
I mean, I think the way that we approach camp is that we have a schedule that we're working off of, and then always willing to adjust and adapt based on health of the football team, what we need at a particular moment, what situations we may need to go back and revisit. So I think the one thing that we've always been willing to do is to adjust a schedule. You know, we've got padded practices scheduled, and there may be days where we're not, or that there's days where we don't have pads on. That I think that's something that we've always been real comfortable doing, is adjusting the schedule based on, you know, what we feel like we need.
Mike, one more question about the COVID. You were talking about the players. Have all the coaches and staff been vaccinated?
All our coaches that will be working with the players have been.
What a number of changes, Mike, defensively for you guys as you look at the personnel group overall. Are there certain traits that you hope to see in this group, or that that maybe some of the new personnel might bring?
I mean, I think you're always looking for players that are impactful, that are willing to be playmakers within your scheme. You know, I think that you have to play within a scheme, but at some point in time, there's a football, and your job's to go get it or knock it away from somebody, or, you know, tackle the guy with the ball. And so the more that we can have guys that impact football game, that are ability to make plays, would always be welcome.
Simon, I guess, is one of the latest additions to this team. You can go back with him. What do you like about him? What do you hope to see from him in camp?
Well, we expect this, you know, out of John is what we expect everybody else, is be available to come out there and work, learn. You know, Coach John in college, had an opportunity to coach him in Houston, and, you know, we made a decision to bring him in here, and, you know, I'm sure he'll compete at outside linebacker and special teams just like the rest of those guys in that group.
Mike, several college coaches, Nick Saban, has said that the lack of practice last year, spring practice, hurt the development of defensive players, given that they weren't able to react on the field to what was in front of them. Do you feel like that was the case in the NFL, given the COVID restrictions and how it changed practice leading into last season, that made it more difficult for defense than offense?
Nick knows a lot more about defense than I do, so I'm going to defer to him. You know, I just think that any time that you don't have those reps and you're used to having them, you know, that's we were excited to be able to work with the guys that were here, either, you know, for the entire off season, or the ones that came in at some capacity, you know, throughout it. That's all I can say. I can't really tell you, you know, why or what happened because we didn't have it last year. I just can tell you that, you know, I saw some guys make some significant progress, guys that were here. Anthony Ferkser, Tier Tart, Christian Fulton, you know, those guys that just work on, and I see them now, and I mean, they look different. They don't look like the guys that we coached last year.
Different is your feel for these guys right now compared to a year ago at this point, and how does this compare to like a regular year right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always that purgatory, right? That time after mini camp before training camp. And so everybody talks about what's the most important time of the year. And to me, that's the most important time, because whether they're working out with somewhere in May or June, or they're working out with you in May or June, they leave and they go away and they go different places. And it's the players that can go and be self-motivated and be determined to come back better in end of July than they were for off-season workouts, better than they left it. So we'll see. I mean, you don't have much contact with them other than a text like, hey, how's it going? Just checking in on you. That we do that throughout the summer, but to see him physically, I can just go by the conditioning test, which was excellent, and then, you know, where we're going to start at tomorrow.
Mike, where do you feel like you've grown the most as a coach over the last 3 years, entering year 4 with the Titans?
And I think having been at college, and then you go to Houston, you try to find what your coaching style is, and you don't ever want to change or waver. But, you know, I just think that there's so much more time in the individual and the person, as well as coaching them. And I don't know if that was necessarily the case when I played. But I don't, you know, I take that in, you know, I'm very honored to be able to build that trust and know, you know, what are the good things that are going on in a player's life, and what are some of the things that, maybe aren't so good, and that we all have things that we have to deal with. And so I think I've probably put a lot more time into that than I thought I would have, and that's okay because I've enjoyed that just as much as coaching a guy on the field as I have, trying to get to know him and help him through his growth as a man, as a brother, a husband, and as a father.
Woodside and Kaiser have had little to no game action the last couple of years. How important are the preseason games, and do you have a sense of how much you want each of them, how much work you want each of them?
Yeah, I would imagine I don't really go in there with a plan, but I would imagine they're going to play a lot, and they're going to play a lot with different people. I think that's the thing when you're evaluating quarterbacks is that, they both have an opportunity to play in front of some or play with some players that you anticipate being on your roster. And then sometimes you evaluate them with guys that may not be. And, how do they motivate those guys? How do they inspire those guys? How do they function, when they're not playing with a first string, receiver or a first string offensive line?
You think you're a lot further ahead of where you were this time last year because of the offseason work that you had?
I think we're right where we were every year. We're right back to needing to do a lot of work and build that foundation that we talked about. To say, hey, we're ahead. We go back every year, and we're going to go back to our installation and go back to our fundamentals and coach all that stuff that we feel like is important.
When you had those kind of set the expectation conversations with Julio Jones, was leadership something that you guys talked about? The reason why I ask is because it seemed like he hit the ground immediately running, helping the guys, the younger receivers.
Well, one thing I told him was that I'm going to hold the best players the most accountable, and hopefully that they can then in turn do that to the rest of the team. I've always said that that's something that we believe in. That's how I was coached, and that's what I know. So I just wanted to make sure that he understood that, which he did, and that's something that he was very comfortable with, and we were able to have a conversation. So all our conversations and that everything that he's done since he's been a member of our team has been positive.
Jeff talked about wanting to kind of show that they're a lot better than perhaps they were last year. You brought up Christian Fulton and the improvement you've seen in him. Kind of how much, with the addition of some guys in there, and these core players because you've coached them now for, in some cases, 3 years going on 4, how much do you believe in this defense? We know how much you believe in Shane because you stuck with him, but how much do you believe in this defense?
A lot. A lot. I can't wait to watch these guys play, practice, perform. Because we go back, and our job is obviously with coaches, especially, you're looking at the negatives. You can remember every time you called something and they hit you on it or something bad happened. But when you go back and you watch, there's a lot of great snaps. There's a lot of great defense. But we have to be better. We have to be better on third down. We have to go and force the quarterback and make him be uncomfortable. And we have to cover guys at the sticks and all those things that we teach. Because, again, that's where the problems occurred. I don't think that it was like, just miserable. There's a lot of good snaps in there. And then, unfortunately, when you play bad third down defense, you're just giving them more opportunities. And, we know with more opportunities comes more production. So, that's something that we hit hard in the offseason. We were teaching it and practicing it. So hopefully that will start to show up, and then we'll be obviously practicing it out here.
Given how both of your kickers, they haven't kicked an actual field goal in a game, what went into the decision not to bring Gostkowski back and kind of stick with those guys as the competition?
Well, we'll work with those guys right now and see where it goes. We're comfortable and positive that those guys are going to go out, compete, give Tucker an opportunity. He wasn't available to us last year. He was really impressive as we worked our way through training camp, and then got injured. And so, I think it's and so does John. Obviously, the right thing to do to let those guys compete, and then if, like any other position, if we have to bring guys in, we can do that.
Is Gostkowski a potential option down the road?
Until he retires, I would imagine that anybody would be a potential, but I don't know. I think he lives down the street, but I'm not sure. I don't know.
Two guys, Kevin Johnson and Avery Jones, retire kind of weeks after they sign. How surprising is that when a guy makes that decision, and how much of a wrench did it throw into sort of your plans?
No wrench. I mean, I think that every player me included, you get to a point and you get to a time where it's, your heart or your mind or your body just isn't in it. And it's hard to fake that every single day in training camp. The grind gets you. The grind gets every one of us. And I told those guys, congratulations. I was proud of them that they came to the decision that they did. And hopefully they can find something quickly that continues to motivate them and makes them want to be successful.
Continue to be patient with, I guess, Caleb and Bud. Do you feel like those guys made progress from the last time you saw them? And then what's the process like?
Well, they're on PUP, so they work out. They go to meetings. They rehab. And they just can't be involved in practice or the walkthrough. And those guys are working hard to get better. And the same thing I tell our team, that everybody here has a plan. For most everybody, that plan's the same, but then for others, it's a little different. But at the end of the day, everybody's working hard to improve or get better and help the team.
To a guy like Dylan, has it been your experience that smaller school guys, even very talented ones, take a little bit more to transition to the NFL level, or does it just matter?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that the size of the school necessarily matters. I mean, sure, there's been good players from small schools, just as there's been, probably the numbers there would be the only thing that's different. Where Dylan's working hard. He's learning. He's been here the last couple days. It's been good to be here with Taylor and Roger, a couple guys that came in here early, and we're really ready to go. Really, really excited about the way they showed up here with great leadership, great attitude, great effort, great conditioning. Thanked them for that. Those guys were off today, so hopefully they can all come back, and those 30 guys could be ready to get going tomorrow with this new group of 60.
Mike, how are you going to approach Taylor? He obviously seems clear to go, but are you going to take anything?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of guys that are going to be, off and on and do things, and that's all part of what I tried to talk about with Jim's question, was just have the ability to adjust and adapt and look and see what guys need. Some guys may need more individual time and less team reps. Some guys may need more team reps, based on age, based on how they feel, based on what they're coming back from. So to sit there and say this is exactly what it's going to be, I couldn't tell you that. But, yeah, there's not, he's not going to take he's not going to be in every single period from tomorrow until the end of training camp. I think we all know that.
And how valuable is it, just from what you said about working with Dylan, just to have him back on the field, even if he's not taking every rep, to work with guys, mentor guys, all that?
Well, we have coaches for that. I mean, we pay Taylor to block his guy, but in all seriousness, you learn a lot from guys, and we really are happy with our coaching staff. But then a lot of times, when you hear it from a veteran player that's been in that position, or say, hey, maybe try this, that can always help. Ash, got anything, Ash? Bring it.
How good does it feel to be back?
It feels amazing, Ash. It feels good to look back there and see you back there. I think our team's ready to go. We'll work with you, hopefully, with the in-person interviews. I know Robbie, has had a plan. But let's just be respectful, of what we're doing, and we'll try to make sure that we get the guys in front of you, that you need, hopefully each and every day. Good. So thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, Titans head coach Mike Vrabel at the podium. A lot of good takeaways. We'll get into it coming up next. Harry Douglas is going to join us as well, and we'll break down some Titans wide receivers. He's played with one of them, the newest addition, Julio Jones, played for this franchise as well. All that and more coming up next. I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
As things return to normal, the most prolific offense in Titans history returns to the football field, led by the quarterback.
How about a finger roll? Yes. Ryan Tannehill.
The young star wide receiver.
A.J. Brown.
The 2,000-yard monster in the backfield.
The king could have walked in.
Oh, yeah. And they've added Julio Jones to the mix.
Touchdown! Titans!
Keep it here all the time for all the action.
The Titans get it done again.
The home of Titans radio is 104.5 The Zone.
with me if I'm just sitting out in the parking lot. I have no idea where they're going to put me, by the way. And is Kirby Allen Curbin coming with me? Because I feel like he's not allowed right now. 615-737-1045 is how you get in on the conversation. Let's react to what we just heard from Mike Vrabel. Were you satisfied with the answers that you heard from the Titans head coach? Among the biggest topics of conversation, of course, Caleb Farley and Bud Dupree. You heard about the kicker situation. We will replay some of this audio for you momentarily. But I want to know whether you were satisfied by the answers that you heard from the Titans head coach on the things that you guys care about most. Kicking, injuries. We talked about vaccinations, or they talked about vaccinations with Vrabel, and where basically this team is, having had a normalized offseason in a way that last year's team was not able to do. He gave some interesting comments on that we'll run back for you momentarily. Remember that Harry Douglas is going to join us as well, former Titans wide receiver, former teammate of Julio Jones. Always enjoy our time with Harry, and former Louisville Cardinal, so he knows all about Des Fitzpatrick. So a lot of Titans wide receiver conversation coming your way coming up next. But in the meantime, 615-737-1045. So I guess, Lucas, the place that we should start is with the comments on vaccination, because it was a very, very detailed answer that Mike Vrabel gave without necessarily answering the question. This was the Titans head coach, if we have that available, Lucas. This was the Titans head coach when asked by Teresa Walker, who I don't know if she zoomed in or if she recorded that and sent it in from Tokyo because she's covering the Olympics. But Teresa Walker, with the first question, asked Mike about the vaccination status of the Titans.
There with the vaccine, I get that. I recognize that. Hopefully we can get a lot of that covered here today, so that moving forward we can talk about football, we can talk about our team, and we can talk about our players. Is that obviously to everybody, it's also very important to everybody in the league. It's important to the fans, the players, the NFL Players Association. It's important for all of us to make sure that we're well aware of what the protocols are for vaccinated and unvaccinated players, and that we follow those, that whatever that may be, the mask wearing, we're all wearing the tracing devices, the social distancing each and every one of us has to this game, to this league, and most importantly to the team. I'm comfortable with where we're at. We continue to add, recently as yesterday, to the vaccination list, and guys are continuing to do research, to educate themselves, to make a personal decision that we've said it was all along, and hopefully one that they can come to that will help them. And percentages, I'm very comfortable with where they are, and I think they've continued to go up, and I would expect them to go up. As far as identifying those players that haven't been vaccinated, that will be done within our building, so that we can continue to remind them of the protocols that they have to do and make sure that they are following those protocols, practice field. So I wouldn't see any reason to try to differentiate those players on the field. It's being done so that inside the building, we can remind those players that aren't of, hey, what you have to do. And so that was the reason for that differentiation.
Mike Vrabel talking about the vaccination status of his team. Teresa asked for a percentage. Mike didn't give one. And that's that's fine. But what there is a discrepancy between is whether there is this threshold of 85% vaccinations among the players and whether the protocols will be lifted or not. Now, Puka, who is always doing such a great job to send us information when we ourselves are not able to locate it, this is what Puka sent us on Twitter, an article from the NFLPA clearing up the vaccination questions that players have and are asking of the Players Union. So this is a question that it's on the website. What will happen when a team reaches 85% vaccinated? Will the protocols be lifted for all players? The answer, according to the NFLPA, is no. This was never the case and is currently not even being discussed. So Vrabel was basically disputing, he's not sure what he did not see a memo with 85%, that being the threshold. He's not sure where that number came from. And then while he's answering that question in the way that he did, I'm scrolling through my timeline, and my buddy Jeff Goodman at ESPN, who covers the Bears, they're asking Ryan Pace about whether the players have met the 85% vaccination threshold. And Ryan Pace is saying, yes, he believes that they have. So, it's not just that this number is floating out there by somebody's invention. There seems to be confusion even in the league. So whether and Mike, I trust in terms of his diligence about all of the memos, and I know they get buried with memos from the league on this kind of stuff, especially during COVID and the reintroduction of the players into the facilities and vaccinated versus non-vaccinated players. They have to be buttoned up on that stuff. So if it's not in a memo, when Mike says he hasn't seen that, I 100% believe him in that regard.
Do you think he almost sounded diplomatic in his approach, talking about vaccinations within his players, like in a way that implied that it does give you a competitive advantage for everybody to be vaccinated and that they want to go in that direction, but utilize that it's a personal choice, kind of that verbiage where he didn't sound like our goal is to get to this percentage by this time. Everybody needs to be vaccinated. Not like we saw from Greg Sankey at SEC Media Days. Sounded more diplomatic with his team, not so much with the NFL to me.
Well, yeah, but he's always been like that. I mean, that's been basically the line from day one. Nothing has changed in that regard, even as this was starting to become a thing with vaccines being provided to the public and then to the NFL players to have access to. It was always about personal choice. They're not, Vrabel hasn't never once with us, taken a hardline stance on these guys need to be vaccinated. In a way, because I know people look at like Bruce Arians, right, where he's saying, I don't know what reason they would have not to get vaccinated, which does not, it's nice it's good if you are somebody who is super pro-vaccine and you're hearing an NFL coach come out that blatantly with it, but it also ignores, health implications, people's uncertainty, people's the lack of information, the lack of resources that some people may have that they are willing to receive, unlike DeAndre Hopkins, it seems, but I'm not going to get back on that.
But it is a line to toe because like Ryan McGee said, he was talking about college football, but it pertains. It is a competitive advantage. You don't have to worry about the testing and the contact tracing and all the things that come with it if an unvaccinated person tests positive. So some coaches are going to have to find some kind of balance of taking a hardline stance while still telling players, do your thing. It's a personal choice, but it is a competitive advantage.
Yeah, but I mean, Vrabel's not going to do that, right? The NFL's already done that for him. They've come down and say, hey, if you don't do this and you cause an outbreak, we're going to cause you to forfeit.
Yeah.
If a game is canceled. That's on you. So, Mike doesn't, in a perfect, you can really go back and forth and do the criticism however you want to, right? If you are somebody who is not interested in vaccines, you could say, well, Mike Vrabel is kowtowing in a way that is too pro-vaccine, my choice, whatever the hell. You can bitch about it on one side, you can bitch about it on the other. Mike Vrabel is staying middle of the road, which is exactly where he needs to be because the locker room is not one way or the other. Mike Vrabel, to be able to balance the locker room, needs to be middle of the road. Diplomacy is, I think that's the best possible approach. Vrabel's not helping anybody get vaccinated if he's saying, if he's staring. I don't want to use a player as an example because I don't know whether they're vaccinated or not, some of them. But if Vrabel is looking at an undrafted rookie free agent and being like, hey, if you don't get the vaccine, you're probably going to be on the outs. We're probably going to cut you when it comes time to cut down the roster later in August. It's not like Mike wins anything by bullying a player into getting vaccinated that way without providing proper information and all of these things. I believe that Mike Vrabel has taken this approach, and he has been steadfast in this approach, that they are going to present them with the information, they are going to let them make their own decisions, and they will adjust accordingly. Vrabel, when we talk about players, coaches, this is the kind of thing that we're referring to. Why does Mike Vrabel not disclose injuries? Because he's protecting the players. Why does Mike Vrabel make a pointed stance on not spending time in the locker room? Because that's the player's space. If you're talking about Vrabel as a player's coach, you're running it through the prism of how Mike was handled as a player and how he has learned from his experiences of what works for players and what puts players in worse positions. That is what makes Mike Vrabel a player's coach, not just because he played the game. Mike Vrabel's not chopping it up in the locker room. maybe every once in a while, but you will almost never see Mike Vrabel in the Titans locker room at the practice facility because he has made it clear that that is their place to govern themselves. That is their place to have away from the coaching staff. That it is not his place to be invasive in that regard, just as he is telling you it is not his place to put them in a position where they're not forced to take the vaccine, but they are being strongly pressured into taking the vaccine. They can let them know it's a competitive advantage without completely taking a hardline stance the way that Greg Sankey did in the SEC, and that the NFL as an entity has taken in regards to potential forfeit scenarios should a game be canceled due to an unvaccinated outbreak, right? That's not for Mike Vrabel to do, and that's the stance that he's taken on it. I think it's a wise one. We will take your calls coming up next. People are chiming in. They want to weigh in on their reaction to Mike Vrabel's press conference. We started with vaccinations, but there were several other important questions that were asked of the Titans head coach that I think people are going to want to hear him on when we come back. I'm Buck Reising. Oh, by the way, Harry Douglas at 12:30, so stick around. This is 104.5 The Zone.
The Install with Greg Cosell gives you an inside look into the film life of senior producer for NFL Films and NFL Matchup, Greg Cosell. The Install with Greg Cosell, joined by Buck Reising, every Wednesday afternoon at 6. Download now at Apple Podcast, Spotify,